Hey everyone, welcome back to the Checkered Sky channel where we dive into true crime stories. Today, we're diving into the chilling case of Anita Knutson, an 18-year-old college student whose life was cut short in a small North Dakota city. It was June 3, 2007, in Minot, a quiet community anchored by its Air Force base, where violent crimes were almost unheard of. Anita was a bright, ambitious freshman at Minot State University, embracing the excitement of independent living in a modest off-campus apartment she shared with a roommate. That morning, her father, Gordon Knutson, stopped by for a routine visit after not hearing from her over the weekend. What he found would shatter his world forever. Anita lay dead in her own bed, stabbed twice in the chest. Blood soaked the sheets, and a bloody pocket knife was right there in the room, rinsed in the sink, but still bearing traces of the horror. There was no sign of forced entry through the door, which was locked, and the apartment seemed otherwise undisturbed. No ransacking, no obvious struggle. It looked like she'd been caught completely off guard, perhaps while resting or asleep, by someone who might have been familiar enough to slip in without raising alarms. Police arrived swiftly, swarming the scene and launching an investigation that would uncover layers of mystery. Who could have done this to a kind, unassuming young woman like Anita? Was it a random intruder, or someone from her inner circle harboring hidden resentments? The lack of chaos suggested intimacy, yet the details, like that slashed bedroom window screen found on the ground outside, hinted at something more calculated. As the community reeled in shock, questions piled up. Why leave the weapon behind? And how did the killer vanish without a trace in such a small city? This heartbreaking discovery marked the beginning of a long, twisting journey for answers. But to truly understand the weight of what happened, we need to step back and explore Anita's world. The everyday routines, relationships, and subtle tensions that might hold the key to unraveling this puzzle. Anita grew up in the small, tight-knit town of Butte, North Dakota, surrounded by a loving family that shaped her into the kind, responsible young woman she became. Adopted as a baby by her parents, Gordon and Sharon Knutson, along with her siblings Daniel and Anna, Anita stood out from an early age for her caring nature, always quick to help others, and her dedication to her studies. She thrived in school, building strong foundations that would carry her forward. Graduating from Velva High School in 2006, Anita took the exciting step to Minot State University, where she pursued a major in elementary education. Her dream was clear: to become a teacher, drawing from the positive influences of her own educators to inspire the next generation. To fund her college life, she juggled multiple part-time jobs, including as a housekeeper at the Fairfield Inn, in retail sales at Vanity and the local mall, and at the e-telecare call center, highlighting her strong work ethic and ability to balance a demanding schedule. In Minot, Anita shared an off-campus apartment with a female roommate, savoring the independence of young adulthood. While the setup brought freedom, it wasn't without its challenges. She occasionally mentioned to her family minor disagreements over everyday issues like cleaning duties or noise levels. Still, these seemed like typical growing pains, nothing that overshadowed her positive outlook. She built a solid network of friends through her classes and workplaces, enjoying low-key social time that kept her grounded amid the busyness. Her daily rhythm was simple yet fulfilling: mornings dedicated to lectures and coursework, afternoons at her jobs, and evenings for relaxation or catching up with loved ones. On the surface, Anita's life brimmed with potential: the promise of a career she loved, supportive relationships, and the thrill of charting her own path. But as we'll see, even in this seemingly ordinary routine, there were threads that, in hindsight, might weave into the tragedy that unfolded. With this glimpse into who Anita was, let's turn to those final fateful days leading up to her death, where the cracks in her normal world began to show. Anita's life in Minot had settled into a comfortable, predictable rhythm by the spring of 2007, a blend of academic pursuits, work shifts, and quiet personal time that reflected her growing independence. But the weekend of June 1st through June 4th would shatter that normalcy forever, turning ordinary moments into clues scrutinized for years. Let's rewind to Friday, June 1st. The last day anyone could confirm Anita followed her routine without a hint of trouble. She started with morning classes at Minot State University. After wrapping up her lectures, she headed to her part-time shift at the Fairfield Inn, where she worked as a housekeeper. Coworkers would later remember her as consistently reliable and upbeat, always arriving on time and bringing a positive energy to the team. She finished in the late afternoon and returned to her apartment, a modest student space filled with books, clothes, and the everyday clutter of college life. Once home, Anita made her habitual call to her mother, Sharon, sharing updates from her day in a conversation that felt entirely routine. No worries, no conflicts, just the warmth of family connection. With her roommate out of town visiting family, Anita had the place to herself that evening. She likely spent the time unwinding, perhaps reading a book or listening to music, her go-to ways to relax after a long week. Friends knew her as someone who enjoyed casual social outings, but didn't always seek them out. There's no record of her leaving the apartment that night, suggesting a quiet end to her Friday. As Saturday, June 2nd dawned, the first signs of something amiss began to emerge. Anita was scheduled for another shift at the Fairfield Inn, but she didn't show up, a rarity for someone so dependable. Coworkers tried calling her, but the phone rang unanswered. Back in Butte, Sharon attempted to reach her daughter multiple times over the weekend, growing concerned when the silence stretched on. Anita's family knew her as responsible, so they hoped it was something minor, like a forgotten charger or a busy schedule. The unease carried into Sunday, June 3rd, with more unanswered calls piling up. In the early hours, around 2 a.m., Anita sent a few simple text messages to a friend, casual exchanges that revealed no distress, just everyday chatter. These would prove to be her final known communications. By Monday, June 4th, the worry had escalated to action. Gordon, unable to shake his growing dread after Sharon's reports of the silence, decided to drive from Butte to check on Anita. Upon arrival, her car in the lot offered false hope. He knocked, but silence greeted him. Peering through the bedroom window, he spotted the slashed screen lying on the ground outside, a chilling hint of intrusion, before glimpsing Anita's body on the bed, covered by a robe amid bloodied sheets. With the property manager's help, they unlocked the door, and the nightmare unfolded. Police were summoned at 5:12 p.m., quickly securing the perimeter, cordoning off the area with tape, and calling in detectives and crime scene technicians. They documented everything meticulously: photographs of the room, fingerprints dusted from surfaces, and potential evidence collected, all in hopes of piecing together how this could have happened. What immediately struck investigators was the eerie lack of disruption. No furniture overturned, no belongings scattered, suggesting Anita might have been asleep or relaxed when the attack occurred, unaware of the danger until it was too late. The apartment door showed no forced entry and had been locked from the outside with a key, but the bedroom window screen lay slashed on the ground, a potential entry point for an intruder. As night fell, the medical examiner examined the body on site before transport for a full autopsy. Initial findings pointed to 2 deep stab wounds in her upper chest as the cause of death, with one lacerating her heart for a swift end, and the time of death estimated sometime on June 2nd or early June 3rd, based on the body's condition. No evidence of sexual assault emerged, and nothing seemed stolen. Her purse, phone, and other items remained in place, eliminating robbery as a motive and suggesting the killer had a targeted personal reason. In the kitchen sink, the small pocket knife, still bloodied, was bagged as the likely weapon. It appeared ordinary, possibly from the apartment, raising questions about whether the killer brought it or grabbed it impulsively. All evidence, bedding, clothing, swabs, was sent to the state crime lab in Bismarck for DNA and fingerprint analysis, with hopes that profiles from the handle could identify who wielded it. The word spread quickly, devastating friends, family, and the community. Anita's sister Anna, then just 15, would later recall the family's world crumbling. As the shock settled, the full weight of the investigation kicked in, with police chasing leads that would twist and turn for years. The next day, June 5th, brought a press conference at City Hall, where Lieutenant Dan Strandberg addressed reporters and anxious residents. He described the death as the work of an apparent intruder, but noted the rarity of such violence in Minot, a city of about 40,000. In my experience, victims and suspects usually have some close relationship, Strandberg shared, withholding specifics to protect the probe while pleading for public tips. Investigators wasted no time on interviews, starting with those nearest to Anita. Gordon recounted his drive, the unanswered calls, and spotting the slashed screen with maintenance worker Marty Annell, who was questioned about building security and any unusual sightings. Sharon detailed their last normal phone call, while siblings like Anna shared memories of Anita's gentle spirit and any offhand mentions of tensions. The focus widened to her daily contacts. Fairfield Inn and Vanity co-workers confirmed her unusual no-show, expressing disbelief. University friends described her as friendly and involved, without apparent foes, as detectives dug for romantic links or grudges. The roommate, Nicole Thomas, back from her weekend away, provided insights into their living arrangement, acknowledging occasional friction over chores, but nothing severe. Tips began flowing in by June 7th, including the witness account of the man running from the area on June 3rd. His description distributed via sketches, though no identifications followed. Neighborhood canvases uncovered rumors of nearby parties or strangers, but leads evaporated. The partial autopsy release on June 13th confirmed the knife's role, but lab results on DNA, a mix including Anita's, and fingerprints yielded no database matches. Amid the investigation, Minot's community came together in grief. Anita's memorial on June 11, 2007, at Oak Valley Lutheran Church drew hundreds, who shared stories of her art, dreams, and kindness. She was laid to rest in Butte Cemetery, with her family vowing to seek justice. To encourage tips, they offered a $10,000 reward, matched by $5,000 from state investigators and boosted by local contributions to over $20,000, hoping to spark new leads, though calls soon dwindled. By late 2007, with leads exhausted and no arrests, the Minot Police Department classified the case as cold. Dozens of interviews were conducted. Evidence from the crime scene was processed, but nothing led to a breakthrough in the investigation. The pocket knife from the sink, with its mixed DNA, including Anita's on the blade and degraded profiles on the handle, offered no clear matches in databases. Anita's family refused to let her story fade, keeping the reward fund active to encourage any lingering information. This incentive sparked occasional tips, rumors of suspicious neighbors, overheard arguments, or strangers near the apartment, but most proved fruitless. Police revisited cleared suspects, like the maintenance worker at the apartment complex and roofing crews spotted nearby, but their alibis were airtight. The mysterious man seen running from the area remained a ghost. No sketches could identify him. Even tips about a group speaking Spanish near the complex led nowhere, leaving investigators with no solid leads. By 2008, a year after the murder, the case remained unsolved, and Minot residents grew cautious as they went about their daily lives. Anonymous calls to Crime Stoppers hinted at possible jealousies or romantic entanglements in Anita's circle, but verifications came up empty. Detectives pored over photos, questioning the lack of theft and the locked door. Could the killer have had a key, staging the window to mislead? By 2009, media attention waned, though the family kept vigils alive, urging tips in local news. Online discussions speculated wildly, from transient serial offenders to overlooked connections, but authorities dismissed them as unsubstantiated. The stagnation persisted through 2010 and 2011, with sparse tips yielding no traction. Anita's siblings spoke out about the emotional toll, pleading for closure. The family's grief deepened in 2013 when Daniel, struggling with the loss of his sister, took his own life, a tragedy Anna later linked to the devastating impact of Anita's unsolved murder. By the 5-year mark in 2012, police acknowledged that without new evidence, resolution seemed distant, even as forensic technology evolved. Cross-checks with regional unsolved cases turned up no links, and theories lingered in limbo. Hope flickered in 2015 on what would have been Anita's birthday when the family presented a petition with over 1,000 signatures to the police, demanding renewed efforts and suggesting outreach to shows like Cold Justice. This reignited local coverage and led to a feature on NBC's Cold Case Spotlight, prompting a fresh wave of calls. Still, no game changers. Behind the scenes, the push encouraged a file review, setting the stage for subtle shifts. In 2016, DNA advancements provided a pivotal update. Retesting the knife isolated a partial profile from the handle, too limited for databases but viable for direct comparisons. It ruled out several males from Anita's orbit, but didn't exclude certain female connections, quietly redirecting scrutiny toward overlooked dynamics, like roommate relations. Follow-up interviews sought statement discrepancies, but the case remained dormant, progress incremental at best. Change arrived in 2018 with Detective Macaulay Talbot assuming the file. Her fresh perspective prompted a comprehensive review, re-interviews, and alibi cross-checks with emerging digital records. The breakthrough came in 2021 when Minot Police partnered with Cold Justice. The team re-interviewed witnesses and retested evidence, uncovering new statements from people claiming Nicole Rice confessed to the murder years earlier. DNA on the knife, though not conclusive, couldn't rule her out. These findings, tied to early reports of roommate disputes, pointed directly to Anita's former roommate. On March 16, 2022, police arrested Nicole Rice, previously Nicole Thomas before her marriage, charging her with murder, a major break after 15 years of dead ends. But would these confessions and evidence hold up in court? As the case moved to trial, the question loomed. Was Nicole Rice the killer, or had police targeted the wrong person? The trial of Nicole Rice for the murder of her former roommate, Anita, thrust the long-dormant case back into the spotlight, unfolding in a courtroom nearly 18 years after the shocking discovery in Minot. After her 2022 arrest, Rice pleaded not guilty to felony murder charges. To ensure fairness amid local media frenzy fueled by the Cold Justice involvement, the proceedings were relocated from Minot to Grand Forks, North Dakota. Jury selection moved swiftly, and the trial commenced on March 18, 2025, presided over by District Court Judge Richard Hagar. Over 7 grueling days, more than 20 witnesses testified, weaving a tale of escalating roommate tensions, investigative flaws, and circumstantial threads that the prosecution aimed to tie into a conviction. Yet, as details emerged, uncertainties loomed, leaving everyone wondering if this would finally deliver the closure Anita's family had chased for nearly 2 decades. Prosecutors opened with a compelling narrative of pent-up resentment exploding into violence, asserting that Nicole Rice stabbed Anita twice in the chest during the early hours of June 3, 2007, amid ongoing household conflicts. They spotlighted Rice's inconsistent statements over the years, initially claiming she was visiting her parents' farm that weekend, but later mentioning outings with friends, including a night at a bar in Russo, 40 miles away, before returning to the apartment. These clashing stories raised red flags for investigators, undermining her alibi. Central to their case was the pocket knife, with forensic experts testifying to the mixed DNA on its handle. While Anita's blood dominated the blade, the handle's profiles couldn't definitively exclude Rice, despite degradation. Dr. William Sens, the autopsy pathologist, vividly described the wounds: 2 deep chest punctures, one piercing the heart with no defensive injuries to suggest Anita fought back, implying she was attacked in a vulnerable state, like sleep. Testimonies built the emotional core, beginning with Anita's parents, Gordon and Sharon, who shared her college excitement and subtle complaints about roommate discord over noise and chores. Gordon revisited the discovery, suggesting the slashed window screen might have been a diversion to mimic an intruder. Co-workers from the eTelecare call center, where both women worked in 2007, added fuel. Matthew Hansen and Donna Bjelland recounted Rice's frequent heated rants about Anita, including a petty dispute where Anita allegedly unplugged Rice's fish tank filter, killing the fish and igniting further clashes. Hansen noted complaints about Anita's alarm disrupting sleep, portraying a shared space rife with toxicity. The prosecution delivered a bombshell by presenting alleged confessions from Nicole Rice, calling witnesses whose testimonies revealed details that only the killer should know, casting serious doubt on her innocence. Christina Haller, a friend of Rice, testified that in 2008, at a house party in Minot where Rice was heavily intoxicated, she confessed to stabbing Anita, even referencing holdback details not released to the public, like covering Anita's body with a robe and describing her as looking so peaceful after the attack, which matched unreleased crime scene information. William May, Rice's ex-boyfriend at the time, corroborated this by recounting a similar admission during a car ride home from another gathering that same year. He said Rice, slurring her words while drunk, admitted to the murder and provided details that aligned with the holdback evidence, though he didn't report it until prompted by cold justice investigators in 2021. These late-emerging confessions, which surfaced over a decade after the crime, became central to the state's case, suggesting Rice had harbored guilt and slipped up in private conversations, details the defense dismissed as unreliable, drunken gossip from unreliable memories, but which prosecutors argued proved her direct knowledge of the crime scene. Detective Macaulay Talbot testified on the reopened investigation, highlighting Anita's casual 2 a.m. texts showing no alarm and how Rice's alibi unraveled under fresh scrutiny. Dale Plessis, the initial responding officer and later investigations commander, discussed early challenges like staffing shortages from oil booms and floods, but affirmed the evidence now converged on Rice. Wrapping their case, prosecutors called Rice's aunt, Brenda Glynns, for a stunning revelation. Rice had confided that Anita deserved to die and described the scene in matching detail, including the robe and serene expression.
It was so horrible, she said, to just see Anita lying there. But she looked so peaceful, covered up.
Did she say
with a robe, and said that there was a bowl of water in the bathroom sink that whoever did this washed themselves up and washed the knife up.
Did Nicole ever say anything to you specifically about Anita deserving to die?
Yes.
What'd she say?
She deserved to die.
Mid-trial shifted to forensics, with state lab analyst Gebhardt explaining the knife's contaminated DNA as supportive of a familiar handler, perhaps one who attempted a cleanup. Crime scene officers reiterated the lack of burglary signs and the locked door, while the cut screen lacked outsider traces like footprints. The cold justice influence surfaced through producer testimonies, admitting they encouraged tips leading to the confessions. Defense attorneys Philip Becher and Richard Sand fired back, framing the case as a product of flawed policing and media sensationalism. In openings, they argued no direct proof linked Rice, no eyewitnesses, no ironclad DNA, and motives too trivial for murder. They accused the investigation of tunnel vision post-cold justice, prioritizing ratings over rigor. Their key witness, former FBI agent James Douglas Counds, now a private investigator, dissected the 7,000-page case file, exposing neglected leads. The unidentified man seen running from the apartment, roofing workers spotted nearby, a Spanish-speaking group in the area, and other potential suspects overlooked by police. He argued these loose ends pointed to a rushed investigation, casting doubt on the focus on Rice. Coons critiqued unlogged interviews, untested items, and reliance on drunken gossip from delayed witnesses. Cross-examinations were intense. The defense challenged confession accounts, noting Holler and May only reported after cold justice prompts, implying coached or fabricated memories for notoriety. They dismissed the DNA as unreliable contamination from shared living and downplayed spats as standard college drama, not homicidal triggers. Rice opted not to testify, but her attorneys highlighted her post-2007 life: stable employment at the Air Force Base, 2 marriages, and no indicators of lingering guilt. After 7 grueling days of testimony, the sequestered jury of 12 retreated to deliberate, carrying the weight of 18 years of grief and unanswered questions. For 5.5 hours over 2 days, March 25th and 26th, 2025, they sifted through confessions, DNA evidence, and a tangled web of roommate disputes in a Grand Forks courtroom thick with anticipation. Families, supporters, and reporters held their breath as Judge Richard Hagar's voice broke the silence on March 26th, announcing the verdict.
And the defendant, Nicole Aaron Rice, not guilty of...
Nicole Rice collapsed in tears, embracing her attorneys and family, their relieved cheers filling the room, though her legal team later apologized for the emotional outburst, citing 3 years of intense pressure. For Anita's family, who had clung to hope for justice for nearly 2 decades, the verdict was a devastating blow. Anita's sister, Anna, left the courtroom in silence, later sharing a heartfelt post on social media. "A not guilty verdict does not mean innocence. My conscience is clear, unlike the conscience of the jury." Her words captured the family's anguish and unwavering belief in seeking truth for Anita. After 18 years, Anita's murder remains an unsolved puzzle. Why didn't she show up for work that Saturday, despite being alive? Why did she stop answering calls from family and friends, yet sent casual texts late Sunday night? What happened in those final hours after she returned home Friday, until her last message? With no convicted killer, these questions haunt Minot, unanswered. If Nicole Rice wasn't the killer, who was? Share your theories in the comments below.